Okie dokie, welcome everyone. Who names?
Hi there.
So I want to call the meeting to order. This is the order of the Kona Action Committee. It's Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, and the time is now 12:01. This meeting is held in person and by interactive conference technology. The meeting will also be recorded on Zoom. As a reminder, per sunshine law, AC members appearing remotely must keep their cameras on and announce anyone who is with them, except for minors in their location, which I forgot to remind people of. So Dave, you're the only one online, so if there's anyone in the room with you, other than minors, you just have to say so. Okay, great, we're good. Yeah, before I do roll call, I wanted to, I'm not gonna do an Olelo no AL today. All I'm gonna do is use one word, what is the series of words? And it's called maka'ainana. I'm not sure people who know the word, what it references, but generally it means commoners. It refers to the common people of Hawaii, and but the literal translation is really those who look after the land. Maka being I mean food, and nana means to look. So the people who looked after the resources were called commoners. And in that sense, I think this is how we receive our responsibilities. We're not chiefs, we're the commoners. We're here to just look after the land simply. And I think some of the work that we do certainly we are looking after resources. Okay, so I'm gonna do.
Thank you. That was well stated.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to do roll call. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Charles Young. I'm the chair of the Kona Action Committee. I'm going to let the Action Committee go ahead and introduce themselves. Starting with.
Yes, I'm Charlotte Thompson. I'm from Kona.
Nancy Sikio, I'm vice chair. I live in Temple.
I'm John Pelletier. I live in Oklahoma, North Kona.
Dave.
David Huerta.
Okay, and so we have one absent, Rosalie. Yeah, and county staff, I'd like you to introduce yourself first.
Maria Palma, planning department, and development, so many times.
Anyone online? No? Okay, great. Okay, so first off, make sure your cell phones are off. I'm gonna do that, or in silent mode. I'll do that on mine right now, sorry. If there's anyone who's wanting to testify on any of the agenda items, if you're in the room, if you would please sign or sign up to testify and indicate which agenda item you wanted to testify on. And those on Zoom, if you just send a message to our folks that you want to testify, and we'll take the people here first. One of the things that we ask is that anyone who has testimony on any agenda item can testify in the beginning of the agenda if they want to. But I also reserve time when the item is up for agenda and discussion that you can testify to it while the council's in the middle of its own discussion. So first agenda item is going to be just the approval of the minutes.
Did you want to testify?
Minutes.
I signed up.
Yeah. So I don't see anyone online. Right, okay, so approval of the minutes.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Nancy, I'll second the motion to approve the minutes as circulated.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the draft minutes of the January 14, 2025 meeting. Any discussion, additions, comments, concerns? If not, I'll call for the motion. So all in favor of approving the January 14th minutes, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Hearing none, then the minutes of the January 14th, 2025 AC meeting is approved. So there was no one here indicated they wanted to do any public testimony, either in the room or on Zoom, so we'll just go ahead and proceed with the business items. The first thing on the agenda is a Kealakekee Regional Park update, and I believe, John, you're gonna help us with that.
Yeah, so, we sent a letter a while ago to the previous, I can't remember his name, sorry, but the previous Parks Department Director,
Maurice.
Yes. And we didn't receive a response for him, so we decided now that there's a new administration, there's a new director. Let's send out a letter. We got that sent out like 2 weeks ago, last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that. I'm guessing from staff that we haven't heard anything back from him yet. I don't know. Okay. But we sent out the letter, Charlie signed it, and we got that sent over. Thank you, Charlie and staff, and everyone for getting that together. There's a new Department of Environmental Management Director also. He was asked about the wastewater treatment plant, which is really tied to the park. It seemed like it was a little bit lower on his agenda. It seemed really focused on the Hilo side of stuff, so. Not too sure. I don't know, not too sure about that part. The new parks director, though, he had a lot of updates for, and his name's Hanma, Director Hanma. He had a lot of updates for the Old A part, and I was really happy with his responses. He seemed pretty invested in the whole island. So I was happy to see that at his hearing for the appointment. So anyways, that's what's happened so far. Not a lot. We're still waiting for an update from the department. I mean, they put out an EIS for this. They paid a company $200,000 to conduct the environmental impact study, and that was in 2019. So I don't know. I don't know if reaching out to that company to see where they are with that or not is a good idea, or.
So another piece that what's happening is right now the departments are working through the capital improvement budget for the county. And so my understanding is, I mean, right now where they're in the process of, the departments are still submitting and the budget is still being put together. And then the mayor still needs to review it and see how those priorities work with what he wants for this administration. So I'm assuming the park, Kealakekee Park, will be listed.
Okay.
In there, and then maybe as they're working with that, and once, it gets through some further stages, past the mayor's review, then we'll kind of also get an update to see how it's prioritized amongst the other projects that Parks and Rec will have. So that can be another opportunity and maybe another moment for, it might be easier to have a representative like John work with somebody from Parks once they're ready to have that kind of update. So that could be another strategy that we could use.
Is that budget public, or
Is it?
the CIP budget?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
okay.
so I think right now they're just, they're internally putting it, piecing it together. And then I don't know when it goes, because it has to go to council. And that's something that when council will review it and also, and that's in a public forum also,
Yeah.
so. I don't know at what point it gets to council. Do you know what? I think that usually happens like kind of March, April-ish. I could be wrong. I don't know. I think soon enough the mayor will be reviewing it, and then he'll propose his thing, and then there's always moments for changes in it also. So maybe that's another avenue, once we see it pop up. And maybe hit council, or once it's gone through the mayor, then we can also use that as an opportunity to see it listed. Maybe, have an update. It might take a minute more, but maybe there's an opportunity to get.
No, that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
One thing about this project, it's not just whatever is going on in this budget. Oh, if I did some internet search and the funding's been allocated for that part in different increments over years and years and years, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, and whether the funds were actually just budgeted and never spent, or whether they expired, or whether they were spent and nothing ever came of it. But even like the one consultant was hired to do a plan, and then the other consultant was supposedly hired, but it didn't really say them necessarily that the money was actually used. I mean, I think over the years, there's been a lot of money they can find that's contributed to this project for different purposes. So it almost needs to audit for what's been spent, what exists, what may exist, what just expired and went to some other fund. I think people should find out. It represents a huge amount of money over time.
Yeah.
And also, I had gone to the environment management meeting. And because they had on their agenda the water treatment that's out at Kona. And that's the one that would take care of the recycled water for both old airport and state. They never got to it on the agenda, at least it was there. But I did manage to talk to somebody, and she's more involved in the reef study over at Honolulu. But she mentioned that there had been a lawsuit because the water that was being treated and going into the harbor area wasn't satisfactory. It wasn't clean enough. And so I think that they've settled, and the ramifications of that settlement that they had to make improvements. So I don't know where they're at on that, but it would be something to pursue. And I'm not exactly sure who you talked to.
Yeah, that's been kind of the route I've been pursuing since that lawsuit went through, because they sued the county over it. At the appointment hearing, Director Sagawa said they haven't been denied their NDSP permit. That's the permit that would allow them to continue the way they're operating now. So that's why I felt unsure about what route they're actually trying to take. I mean, they're really overwhelmed there because of the helo sites also having some degradation on, their major plants. So yeah, I'm not too sure. And I've reached out to the director before and haven't heard back, but there's a new director now. I didn't know they settled it. What was the?
What they did, and it was in 2023. They had.
Do you know anything about that?
Well, they have to, the settlement is they have to apply for an NPDES permit. And I don't think the Department of Health has done an NPDES permit like this. And so this is my opinion. It's gonna be tough to get it because the bay is already declared impaired for a bunch of things. So generally, they wouldn't allow you to put in more pollution in an area that's already polluted. So they're in. Well, there is none. There is no NPDES permit now. So yeah, I don't know how they will get around that hurdle.
So from the previous administration, we started the discussion on the park, but one of the questions I wanted to ask was within the CIP, whether we can get an explanation on how these CIPs are linked. Because in the previous administration, the Kealakahe wastewater treatment plant was linked to the park because the water was supposed to come from the park. So until the water was cleaned in 2 hours one, then there was no source of water for the park, and that's where the last administration had left it, at least in discussion at this table, was that until they had no money for it. And because they had no money for it, it was low on the priority of the list of the things that they needed to do. That was prior to the suit that they had. And I think the county is also in a consent decree with EPA. Well, we're gonna see where that goes. But they have to remediate all the cesspools. So 53,000. So from a cost standpoint or from a money standpoint, that's gonna be limited, so I'd really like to see how they're linked. In other words, this one has to happen before that one happens. Otherwise, we're gonna talk about this one and keep homing in on it. And it's not gonna get done, because it can't get done because it's linked to some other capital project, maybe for which there's no. Or money has to be somehow gotten. In the last time when we went for open space, and there are other things on the capital budget that were there. It's a budget, but it doesn't necessarily mean the money's been appropriated. So until the money's actually appropriated and secured, it's a number and it's not a reality yet. So from the priority standpoints, I believe the planning department or the administration is gonna have to go through that as well. Which ones they actually seek the funding.
Because this budget does run through the fire department.
Yeah.
At some point, so. Maybe in terms of like action items, it could be. Well, maybe once the budget is released. It could be requesting a meeting, it could be. Something like that, so that we have something, hard to work off of to see if it made the list, and what, in which way did it make it, was a specific phase listed out? And how it aligns with. wastewater.
I'm gonna assume there's gonna be some new stuff on there and some old stuff. And it was actually the planning department who presented that whole thing to the AC, so I would suggest maybe we try to schedule that as an agenda item. We can get, if not from the planning director, maybe from one of them, I'm sure who's the best.
Well, it could also be. Because the planning director, we kind of, in terms of the CIP, it kind of comes through us, the team is kind of working on putting it together, and then kind of direct, my understanding is like director review, but the departments come up with their own priority lists, and then it goes up to the mayor, and the mayor reviews in terms of maybe he has a different, something that he wants to reprioritize kind of thing. That's my general understanding of the process. So maybe once, I think it means it's a little bit more meaningful once it's gone through the mayor's initial review. Then just to step in and to see those pieces and to see, because this is just the capital improvement budget, right? To see what else is on their other budget too, and also for part. Because, right, like if it's not gonna get allocated, it's just a line. But, yeah, I don't know. Or to send to even that they could decide to, designate a couple of you guys, to stay within sunshine to have those meetings. Maybe we can get parks to open their door once they've heard from the mayor, if they're willing to share that, or I don't know at what point would parks be a little bit more open to having a discussion.
Where are they in the timeline?
For the budget?
Yeah.
I believe they are still working with the department heads. And receiving the budgets from the department heads. Has it gone to the mayor's office yet?
I think it's gone to the mayor's office. He's making changes and it's gonna send it back to the departments.
So it's still sitting with the mayor and hasn't given it.
Yeah.
It's working. So it could be a matter of like, I don't know if the end of the month is too soon, but it could be, and once that, then they have to have their own discussions. It could be like, just schedule a meeting to see if they're open with it. There's some dates when they should be done with that. I can talk with the CIP staff and see what they're doing, if they think would be a good fit. But if we designate today to people to work with it, then I can be communicating with you guys about that, and we can connect with the CIP staff to see what is the best fit, and to see if they only have one plan, I believe, in the park and rec side. So if you connect with that person or the department.
Back to the park issue again, I was talking to Don about this, and, when that park was first envisioned, this highway wasn't here, the high school here wasn't here, the Civic Center wasn't here, there wasn't any source of water. And, then that's been, when the state gave the county the money for the park, and it had to be used with recycled water. But there wasn't any source of water, so John was trying to find out the original decree from the state, how the conditions of being forced to use recycled water to irrigate the park or to flush the toilets at the park or whatever. How much of a legal mandate that is, and he was trying to find the archival information to actually read the document of when it was, they handed the money to the county for that purpose, and he hasn't been able to find it.
You have to go to the state archives to find executive orders from
So
governors from that time period.
So for the park, it isn't the issue of wastewater being generated from the park. It has to do with getting fresh water for irrigation and flush toilets. And how much that's legally coupled with the park is what he hasn't been able to find out. And maybe that mandate to couple, I mean, because right now there's all sorts of, the amount of water this facility uses, the amount of water the high school uses, even just to water the baseball field is a tremendous amount of water. So why did this one park get stuck with having to wait until there's recycled water? It doesn't make sense. And I have a feeling that that mandate might be outdated. And that's the research that has to be done to find out. I mean, it may not be fair to keep that around the neck of that regional park still under current circumstances.
In the state archives, you weren't able to dig it out.
I emailed someone that I worked with there and I didn't get a response back, but he's not even involved in that department. I mean, they said you have to go to the state archive, what I read online, so I could email someone else there and see though, and see if someone maybe that is more in the position to receive emails from people and look something up, then I can reach out more about that.
The other thing that occurred to me is the last consultant that supposedly was contracted to do an EIS is what, PBR?
Yeah.
And it seems that, and I'd like to know, and I think Parks, when they come to fight this, should be able to tell us whether PBR actually is under contract or whether that never happened. And it had never been finally signed, and whether they would probably know what that legal status of that mandate is, because if they have to do the EIS, they would have to know those kinds of conditions. So that's another way to potentially, but we don't even know whether, I mean, they may not be actually under contract. That may have been something that never was followed through on. So there's still a lot of questions regarding the park that haven't been addressed. It's totally separate from whether we get funding for a new wastewater treatment plant and all of that. I mean, I really think this area's needs is overdue for a regional park, and that's what we should be focusing on. I mean, we were gonna build a courthouse across the street. They weren't gonna make them use recycled water. The only reason the courthouse didn't get built over there is because there was some endangered plant species there. And all these facilities use tremendous amounts of water, so our park has been held hostage and maybe it hasn't been justified.
And perhaps related or unrelated, the phase 2 of the, we call that new housing development that is Kona Road. They've already laid all the sewage lines and everything on there. You would think that they would have at least that much done for the park as well.
They can't do anything with the park because they haven't completed the environmental impact study, yeah, so like they need that to be finished. But that's kind of the question is, where is that, and what's the state of that?
So it goes beyond Parks and Rec.
Well, that is an essential question that hopefully they can answer, but we have been able to find out whether they do or not. They should be able to answer that question.
So I have a question, if people were trying to contact, are just not getting back to us, what's stopping us from going and having a meeting in their office?
John is running the show on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what Miriam's suggesting, yeah, with that, whenever that budget comes out, maybe it'll be more receptive to having it.
I think in general, the department will. Ran updates and. Last I, heard in terms of the EA was that is the draft is complete and they're reviewing, right? Is that what you told me?
Yeah, I had heard from Bo Kahui at YPAC that they were gonna have a meeting with them. And then he had, excuse me, also invited me to attend, and then that meeting was canceled and never rescheduled. I haven't talked with Bo in a while. But yeah, and we had that release from the release you guys sent us of all the parks, and they had in there, I think that's what they had said. I can't remember, that was a little while ago. There was a big document that was attached to one of our agendas about updates on all the parks, and I think that's the same thing they said there. They expected it to be released last year. Then it wasn't.
I'm familiar with Parks and Rec and their Kona offices. I only know that, I think it's read about how many class do they have? Like. That kind of staff here, or is it just like park maintenance?
I honestly have no idea. I haven't spoken with anyone at the Parks Department. It'd be nice to.
Yeah,
I haven't had that opportunity yet.
yeah, I've been trying to get that.
Yeah.
But I think in just being like looking at the whole process, I think more better we have that conversation after they hear back from the mayor and they like re-strategy, so they know what that means.
Yeah.
Instead of like just giving us a half update.
Right.
I
I think
And
that's
this letter is pretty specific as far as sort of, for them to understand they need to do their own homework so they can answer questions. But
Yeah.
there may not be anybody right now that's up to speed on any of this. It's been going on for so many years. That's another problem.
Well, I thank everyone for helping us stay up on this. This park is still very, like you were saying, Nancy, it's very much needed. It's very much desired from people in the community. Everyone at the school across the street really wants to see this park. Be really nice to move forward with it. Yeah.
And the whole concept of urban planning is that, as the population grows, there's supposed to be a county mandate that different kinds of parks get built, and the county hasn't been living up to their infrastructure obligations and this is just one example. And that's one important role of these CDP action committees, because we're the ones focused on the needs and the overdue infrastructure for our immediate area, and it's up to us to keep bugging them.
So regarding action items, do you think we should motion to set up these kinds of meetings now or wait until we see the budget? Because it sounds like the budgets may not be out by our next meeting, or.
It could not be, but it also could just be something that's done already and it's just waiting for when you guys are ready. We don't have to set a date for the meeting with the department.
Yeah.
Also, the budget may not have anything to do with the questions you sent them regarding this park.
So it'd be a giant.
Yeah. So what do you think, Nancy?
Well, I think it needs to be treated as a separate issue.
Okay.
Because they need to do their homework and they, But coming up with the budget and whether the park is, they still need to answer these questions in terms of what the progress is on the EIS and whether there's funding and whether it legally is mandated to have to use recycle, all these questions. The budget isn't going to answer about any of that.
Do you think there's something else we should do as an action item now, or is it just?
Well, we're waiting for a response from the letter at this point, so.
Okay.
If a draft comes out, before now in the next meeting, you can make us aware of that, we can decide whether we want that on the agenda for discussion or not, but I think the next is funny to hear that.
As far as generally, we might want to see the budget, but that's not related to this park issue necessarily.
Well, the only reason I'd like to see it early is if we have priorities, that not necessarily being prioritized, in the.
Separate from the park.
Or just in general, capital.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in the Kona CDP that obviously needs funding.
Well, there are some roads and some other issues. But yeah. starts.
Right.
Clean up traffic.
So in other words, Kalikake Regional Park and all the problems and background associated with that necessarily tied to this particular budget there.
Well. Yeah, so maybe an FYI thing, if you receive something.
Yeah.
Be good.
Whether it's populated or not.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I'll try to follow up with the state archive. See if I can get a copy of that executive order.
It'd be helpful to kind of see the language in there.
Yeah, I mean, there was two. There was one from Ben Cayetano was the original one that set it aside as a golf course, and then Abercrombie reset it aside as a golf course. Or I'm sorry,
As a part, yeah.
And then if it legally looks like it isn't necessarily mandated to be tied to recycled water, then we should initiate separating it out. And maybe even taking it, if it's a council resolution, I don't know what the next steps would be to not have it tied
Yeah.
to that necessarily.
All right, I think that's all I got.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, we'll close agenda item 1, and agenda item 2 open is the Leeward Planning Commission testimony update. Nancy, you're gonna help us do that.
I'll talk about the part that I testified on, and then maybe we should talk about the parts you testified on. And so the action committee sent John and I to testify at the Leeward Planning Commission meeting regarding our testimony regarding pre-general plan issues, and our testimony regarding the Hokulea reclassification proposal and the general plan from ag to rural. We sent testimony, and then I signed up to testify, and I told them, you have our written testimony, that I'm here to answer questions or to speak about it, and I kind of made a few comments about how the action committee didn't think it was appropriate for that project to be classified, because that, encouraged urban sprawl, which is, in conflict with CDP action, CDP, and couple of questions were asked, and then the acting director was sitting there, and he stopped, sort of interrupted the conversation. He said, I want you to know that remapping in the general plan for that Hokulea project to go from ag to rural was a decision made by the previous administration, and he said he didn't support it. And he said that was going to be on it was going to be on a list of a number of things that are in the current general plan. Planning department is going to suggest making changes to. And he said if we thought that particular recommendation was too big and too much and wasn't a good idea. And that was pretty shocking to hear from the director. So he said the planning department's recommendation currently was to keep it the way it is. So that was a big deal, because that's basically what this committee asked for.
Yeah, I thought it was really exciting. I mean, Nancy found something in the plan that we thought was obviously wrong. She brought it to the attention of everyone, and they changed it. And who knows if they would have changed it back if you hadn't brought that to everyone.
Well, nobody else had brought it up.
Yeah, exactly. No one else had really seen it except you, or had seen it.
I think a few people might have talked to April about it, and over the last couple of months, that a couple people talked. So whether they did or not, I don't know. But they talked about that they were planning on it, and what kind of response they got, I don't know. But when April was giving a presentation about the land use section, she kind of skirted over that whole part of the map. It was really interesting. And Barbara DeFranco said, would you please show us about South Kona? Because you didn't really cover that area, but it was like, it was kind of interesting, the whole thing went down. But there are already 651 lots approved there, and most of them don't have houses on them. And I did a search on the average sales price of the homes that are there. The average price of the last 4 years has been over $4 million. So I mean, how could that be considered part of the rural fabric of our community? You know, it's a private gated subdivision that charges a whole bunch of money to belong, you know, it's I wouldn't have, so I was very, I sent the director an email and told him that I was very relieved to hear his comments on that particular issue. It's like maybe there's hope, you know. And, but I think my recommendation is that when it goes to council, we should go back and repeat our testimony just to make sure, because once it gets to the council, that's where the important stuff happens. So that'd be my recommendation down the line when we get that far, to go back again and repeat it.
Yeah, so Nancy's portion was very successful, mine was a little less successful, I feel like. I mean, I had spoken, that was the second time I testified the first time on both Okalita transit-oriented developments in the Kona plan, Kona CDP. And they had a lot, obviously, to say about the Okalita stuff. I had mentioned I was there to answer any questions, he had a written testimony. They had mentioned at the previous meeting, they hadn't really had time to look at it yet. But I didn't get any questions myself. Later, after testimony was done, Barbara did ask April about our testimony. And
What was the subject?
the transit-oriented developments, yeah, so she did ask April about the transit-oriented developments. April's response was that the land use maps, kind of the way they're laid out, is with the idea of transit-oriented developments, with the urban in the center and then the lower, I'm sorry, high urban, medium urban, low urban outside, and that was kind of the response to it. It seems from planning, they don't want to map things with the transit-oriented development, at least in this general plan. I think the idea is to keep it in the CDP and not the general. They did add a lot of things about TODs in the general plan, like the high urban density or high density urban can be a TOD with that idea. And that's about as far as it went. They were, you know, to their credit, they had taken a lot of testimony that day, and
Yeah, all the people that were here that day were also there, so there were hours and hours of the same group of folks there.
yeah. So I don't know if they had the bandwidth to really explore transit-oriented developments.
Yeah, it
What that
was
means.
frustrating because we were, you know, John had really prepared to be able to talk about that portion of North Kona, you know, north part of the village for the Lily-Oaklani Trust Plan and why that was appropriate as a TOD, you know, in terms of good urban planning for, you know, the future. And he was primed to talk about it and to, you know, make the sales pitch and to answer questions, and then just each opportunity didn't come up.
Yeah. So that was unfortunate. The tale of two testimonies and the success of those. Though I was happy to see that the Hokulia stuff was answered so thoroughly. So that I think is all. I think that's all. Like I said, they would follow with me personally about any questions. So.
Yeah, I think the TOD stuff we're gonna have to keep pursuing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess, are there any more discussions on this? At least my takeaway is that we're proceeding in the right direction, I think, and building momentum towards the goal of really getting more outreach and more collaboration with some of the other communities. And I think then I have something more anecdotal to add later on that subject, but yeah, thank you.
The only other thing to-
Enormous amount of time you have to deal with the research that goes behind it.
The only other thing I want to remind the action committee is giving input to the draft general plan as part of our description of chapter 16. So as this moves along, if people see anything, you know, it's going to be a while before it gets to council or through council. So it's good to be aware that if the two issues we raised aren't necessarily the only issues to raise, if somebody spots something to bring up to this committee that we need to, maybe we want to address, you know, don't assume we're done addressing the draft of the plan.
I have a question. As I read through the general plan, and then I'm looking at the Kona CDP, which I love that document, actually has some really wonderful things. It has to do with the high density, desired higher density in the general plan. why do we want a higher density if we don't have the infrastructure? And are we gonna be playing catch up on this? Are there any kind of things that we can put in this general plan?
Well, that was
That way-
the purpose of the TODs, because the TODs mandate is level of infrastructure that's concurrent with the higher density. Without those mandates, then they're talking in the general plan about the benefits of higher density, but the general plan doesn't force the infrastructure
Right,
to happen concurrently, and that's the problem,
right,
as I see
okay.
it.
Yeah, and especially as we're looking towards like the Kailua Village expansion, which is just Maka. That's where we were pushing with our testimonies too. It's like, hey, let's not just classify this as high density urban, let's classify this as a TOD and make sure that infrastructure to support that community is also there. And that's really the good thing.
The problem with just slapping high density urban on it is it doesn't make any mandates. But it's a different city as far as we're concerned.
More discussion? And agenda item 2. Now we'll close out. And open up the third agenda, which is state legislative testimony. Discussion and potential action on whether the action committee should submit testimony to state legislature on bills relevant to the Kona community development plan. So I think that was something we wanted to open up discussion for.
When I saw the agenda, I mentioned to staff that Senate Bill 869 and House Bill 686 weren't listed as separate agenda item, and they said, Marion said that we should talk about that one. So, which is, to me, should have been two different things, but nonetheless. So maybe we could start with where these two bills are at.
Sure.
Do
Yeah.
you want to give the background on, you know, what we did in terms of trying to get support for the bills?
Yeah, so these two bills, again, are the ones that are trying to get us under the same sunshine law rules as neighborhood boards. Nancy did so much legwork getting Drew Kanuha and Representative Hella to submit these. And before we had the bill numbers, we went out to the South Kohala CDP meeting. That was fun to see a different action committee. There was the response, we told them about the bills and why we think they're important. The response from them was very positive from the people that were there, the people in the committee, and they voted to submit a similar testimony as we did. And thank you, Marion, for moving that along in such an efficient way. And then we also zoomed into the Ka'u. So after we got the bill numbers, there was the Ka'u Community Development Plan Action Committee. We also talked to them. They were also, of course, very interested in this and also submitted testimony. And someone from the North Kohala CDP, or was that the Honoka'a CDP that submitted testimony?
Brad,
Kamakura?
yeah, I guess, I don't, does he
As an
identify
individual.
himself as the,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess so. I'm close, he was represented, but even though they're not active at the moment.
Yeah, we couldn't meet with them. They don't have quorum at the moment. And yeah, I mean, you want me to talk about what happened at the committee? For the Senate bill?
Oh, you can talk about that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He watched it, he
Yeah.
watched the committee when it had this, the joint committee heard it, and then he deferred it till February 4th, and I couldn't stand the idea of watching it as two things, and so, but John watched it, so you can report on it.
Yeah, I mean, at OIP and the Public First Law Center both submitted testimony, kind of asking for clarification, and then Public First Law Center, they're like a nonprofit that they seem to testify on a lot of the sunshine law stuff. They submitted some amendments. I think they were pretty minor, yeah, Nancy, the public sort of. So they got deferred to the next meeting because they deferred all their bills. So I think they were just running out of time. But the next meeting, they seemed to have more clarification of what it meant, and they passed it with amendments. They accepted the amendments to Public First Law Center and all passed it. Tim Richards passed it or voted yes with reservations. Don't really know why he did, but I think there was some, I don't know, they seem to have opinions about neighborhood boards and maybe the openness of neighborhood boards. So they were like, good luck with that on the Big Island, but they did pass it out of the committee, there were no no's. And so now it's going to, I can't remember which committee, no, I don't know which one in the Senate it's going to next, but.
Senate Roads Committee, I can't remember.
Oh, the Judicial Committee.
Government
Yeah,
Affairs or something like
yeah,
that.
so Roads Committee where it went last time, so hopefully the title is good.
And
for roads.
Senator Konyuka's staff thinks that it won't be a problem once it goes to that committee because of the title was clarified.
Senator Kanuha's staff has been awesome and Nancy's been in a lot of contact with them and they've been super supportive. Emailed them right after the committee hearing saying, this is what they said, and they'll email us back right away. So that's been really nice. They've been very supportive. And now so on Thursday, they're gonna hear the first committee is gonna hear the House bill. Harness,
House
David Harness.
Bill 686. And it was the last possible day. If he wouldn't have scheduled it by this Thursday, we would have had the opportunity, to hear it all. So we're sort of sweating it out. I mean, he told a number of you that he was going to schedule it, but it hadn't appeared.
I did email him back.
Yes,
I didn't get a response though, but he did schedule it. So that was a good response.
So anyways, so staff is preparing your testimony and copy CDPs and some homes seek to go back in for the House bill. Because it needs only testimony because it's the companion bill. And I'm submitting testimony and a number of them, I think Brad Kurakawa is submitting testimony. In fact, I think he already has. So
I submitted mine this morning.
I haven't submitted mine yet, but anyway. So I'm gonna talk myself into zooming that meeting just so if they have questions, because last time there were some questions that if somebody like one of us would have been there that knew about it, could have answered it, might have, made them feel more comfortable. So it seems like it's moving along. I mean, it's kind of stressful because these deadlines come up really fast and, but I don't know, I can't see why anybody would want to kill it, but you never know. I mean,
Sometimes you just die.
Yeah.
So you don't have enough time to do it here and so they want to.
Yeah,
This is why sometimes just testimony from community members is so important.
Yeah.
Because now they know they can attach to someone else rather than just sort of living member.
I was looking at the list for Representative Tarnas, all the bills that are referred to his committee. I mean, there are dozens and dozens, and he's not gonna have time to hear, a whole bunch of them.
He himself admitted last year that he had to can one.
So the fact that we ended up on there, I feel really relieved.
Yeah. Well, you and I both wrote to him. Personally. So he understands community. He's always been, in my opinion, responsive to us. But let's just see where it goes. But I think it really has a good chance to get it through. Because, again, it's actually helpful and not against it. It's not a bill that says we don't want this. Something
We're not asking
we
for
help.
money.
Yeah.
No.
There's a little bit of confusion still. They kept saying at the Senate when they voted that this is a Big Island bill. It's for our friends on the Big Island. I think there's still some confusion about like we're trying to get this because we're the only community outreach board besides the neighborhood board. So they trying to stress in the testimony that this isn't just for Big Island.
Which isn't really true.
It's not,
To make
yeah.
the bill more applicable statewide.
Statewide.
Yeah, it actually brings Big Island into conformity.
Right,
With something
yeah.
that's
Yes,
already along central.
exactly.
They should have that.
So anyway, I think that, I don't have anything more to add.
Yeah, I think that's it.
That specifically, if you wanted to talk about maybe potentially other.
Well, I was gonna give you numbers of bills before, and I just, I was on a Zoom call when the power outage hit last week or the week before, and messed my computer up, so it's out for a few days, so all the work that I had promised to do, I broke my promise. But at any rate, I did follow up on some of the bills. But as an example, just for the discussion, there's a couple of bills going through now that, are requesting certain decision-making authority for the land use, by the land use commission to be delegated down to the county level. And this is gonna have, this has to do with zoning from rural or from ag to rural and other. And I think other zoning issues, but specifically those are the ones that were concerning me. So there's definitely I would say, effort to under the heading of streamlining is to try and
It's more of a home rule push.
well, it's a home rule push, but it's really to get around the land use commission. Their determinations have been, for some counties, not favorable, especially for in the area of ag development or ag designation. So it would be beneficial for some counties for this to happen. So it's hard to believe that some of the counties are not in favor of it or have supported it, at least writing this with the proposal. But for Hawaii Island, we're largely ag. And I'm from South Kona, all of South Kona pretty much is ag. If you see a gradual inroads of rural, like the Oakley is one of the examples, then the zoning change itself affords property owners, they still have to go through county approvals. It still has to be consistent with the county CDP, but it allows in the rezoning itself to provide higher density housing on rural lots. So, and this would, because of the rezoning. This, on the one hand, I think, remember when they passed, Ohana housing a long time ago, that was really to help families, who, could not afford, housing, opportunities for their younger generations to build an affordable housing or Ohana housing on the same lot, as long as it was 1 acre or more. And so the intention was really for families. This can address that, but it's gonna be primarily so that people with ag lots, large ag lots can get permitted to build more housing. And the ones that come to, on a 5 acre lot, and I don't know whether this is gonna be limited to that, whether they can subdivide or build 5, down to 1 acres. That's unclear to me. I think that's where maybe the county is gonna have to come up with that decision, but right now it lies with the land. And so I see this as a kind of an erosion of the agricultural sort of nature, of the area where I live in, and it's concerning for me, obviously, because that's why I did where I did. But there are the infrastructure in Kailua, if you see it doesn't meet the requirements of what the amount of traffic we have to deal with. Just drive down South Kona and you'll see that in multiples, because of all the cars vehicles that come to work into from Ocean View. So that just exacerbates the problem to me, but it's not gonna be unique to Kona. It's gonna affect Ka'u, it's gonna affect Hamakua, it's gonna affect all the areas with its large agricultural designations.
So you think the result of this bill, that this decision going to the county is going to increase the amount of rezoning or remapping to rural?
I can't say that for certain. I can't conclude that. But what it is doing is it's allowing the counties now. And we've seen evidence where, at least in one case, the county has already tried that. So, I just have a concern that in our CDP, or representing our CDP, whether this is not an erosion of our CDP, to at least something that we should voice our concern on. Now, there's a second, that this is not the final opportunity, but because the law does say that the county is gonna have the county council will have the final say, but it has to go through, the administrative process and all that. So, but I think for me, it's the opportunity to, or not the opportunity per se, but should we be looking at these at a statewide level that might affect us at a county level, assuming they're trying, can tie into the CDP, but based on what we had, the discussion we just had, I think our plate is so full that I don't know how much more effort we can spend individually or instead of these two.
Well, I think it's important to, like the bill he's talking about, is cutting the state land use commission out of the examination of applications for land that would be going from ag classification to rural classification. And one of the other bills he sent me the number of Senate Bill 1157 and another one, Senate Bill 36, that wasn't on his list that he sent me, have to do just with land within the urban corridor. And it would allow the counties, right now the counties can only be classified from out of ag to another classification at 15 acres. But this would take away that limitation. And so the county could, without going to the land use commission, they could reclassify the whole urban corridor of thousands and thousands of acres on their own without having to go to state oversight. And I support the state land use commission and the state land use law. I mean, because I think that oversight is necessary. I don't think county governments are responsible enough, quite frankly, to have that responsibility. And the state land use commission is more distant and they look at things from more of a pragmatic way. They're not applicant driven. They're looking at things more, does this have infrastructure? Is this meeting environmental standards? And those types of things. And so they take the first cut at looking at the appropriateness of the request. And I think we can't lose that oversight. And that's what all these bills, that bill that he's talking about is a little different in these two. When we first adopted the Kona CDP before the amendments from when it was still shells, I supported the idea because the CDP as shells has that as requirements for all those other things in it. The appropriate oversight is in this document, but when they did the amendment and the council took all the shells out and made them shoulds, then basically the county, mostly the county is trying to give, the county council for the most part is tries to favor applicants' requests, whether they know it or not. So things get approved that are totally inappropriate and don't have adequate infrastructure. And without the land use commission extra layer of scrutiny, I think we would be in a much more haphazard state. So I think all those bills that are trying to cut the land use commission out of the process are about it. Yeah. How that ties to us as the action committee submitting testimony, I haven't quite sort of that.
Can I ask a question? From somebody who doesn't know as much about this, that we know it might be a really basic question. But isn't there, don't we have a goal of sustainability? Is there a tipping point where if we allow too much ag land to turn into a rural program, do we lose that ability to be sustainable?
Well, that's a philosophical question, but there are no guidelines or requirements that address it.
Any kind of, impact reports. I mean, I looked at here and I looked at some of the maps and I've gone to, because I'm interested in the trees and things, I've looked at deforestation and we've lost a lot of our forestation to development, we're losing water, our water table, and you would think that there would be in that, even in a state, land use commission, some kind of studies that would help them structure, you know, what they can and can't.
There are a lot of things that should be addressed that aren't addressed.
I think without a doubt, the loss of the land, ag land, over Owens District has affected in some dry areas, certainly in Kona. And I can speak to this in a place where I worked before. The less forest you have, the less rainfall. You know, Hawaiians call that out in their traditions, they called it out in the Mo'olelo, they called it out in the chants, how it's all connected. And so it's something we know, but has not really been quantified, I guess. You know, we can't say how much water we lost. But you know, I worked on an orchard, 1989 orchard at 4,000 acres, you know, in a period of 3.5 to 4 years. We cleared out 4,000 acres of Bovina forest. So they put in a macadamia nut orchard. This is back in the 60s. And the rainfall at that time was an average of about 60 inches a year. When I left that orchard, we were lucky to get 20. And I can't say it was a direct result of them clearing it, but there has to be some big impact to clearing out that much forest in that short of a time. And it was all woodland forest. And I can say that with great confidence because those hill forests are still there, but it's not on that. So keeping the land in ag affords us the opportunity then to reforest, to replant, to restore watershed. And once it's comes out of that into rural or into some other development, you're not gonna get that back. So if you're gonna think forward at all, and we're in a watershed, we're in a water issue right now, we're gonna probably talk about it in the debate today, but so I just think it's just bad management. It's just we're not bad management, it's just a bad direction. We don't take it.
Unsustainable.
Yeah, it's gonna be unsustainable, but
Are there any incentives that we can suggest be offered?
I think this is where the state can help.
Yeah.
So reforestation.
And I think, and Nancy, you correct me if I interpreted what you said wrong. That's kind of the erosion of the state land use commission. The state land use commission kind of keeps these broader ideas, in their realm where the county's been more applicant point to point, and we want to keep this kind of higher level oversight of it, and that's where the state land use commission comes in. And they're looking at
I
that.
mean, the fact that hopefully a project is reclassified from ag to rural, even ended up in the general plan in the first place, shows you where the county is vulnerable to pressure from developers. And so these kinds of issues are not high on the priority list. Anyway, the Department of Sustainability now, I don't know what they're doing.
So I think the reason this is on wasn't to discuss specific bills. It was really more to try and get a feel from the committee whether there's an interest in if you're doing research, whether we can reasonably bring those to the agenda. And if so, then what are the things that are most important that we need to pay attention to, considering that our role is really to limit it to the Kona community development plan.
I'll probably testify myself on those bills as far as allowing the county authority to en masse reclassify them without land use commission oversight, but I was trying to figure out what the trigger is to tie it to the Stockton. I can't. There's going to be a way to do it, but I haven't been able to come up with it. Well,
I don't think we need to do that today. I think.
yeah, but I mean, that was just right. If I would have come up with something really obvious, I would have definitely brought it up.
Right. Right, because I would think that there are very few people who would be following the bill here on the side. it's not really a county specific, it's really a general.
There's two bills regarding giving the county the total authority to classify without going to the land use commission. They only had Senate bills, they didn't have House and County bills, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't see any. proponent bills when I-
So it indicates they're not coming from the big positions, right?
Yeah,
I mentioned it to somebody that knows a little bit more about the stuff than I do, and he said, those bills will never pass. I said, well, there's more and more of a push of, supposedly cutting these decision makers out of the process because it saves you money, supposedly.
so I just want to encourage committee members to, if you are or having, watch some of the bills that are going on in the legislature that might be, not necessarily county driven, but affect us, then, we have the opportunity to agendize them. And so I would encourage that.
You knows a lot about water. Do you have are there any bills that we should be paying attention to this section regarding water that could represent a CDP issue?
There is a bill about monitoring wells. And I'd have to send them to you, I don't have them all. What about monitoring?
I mean, like monitoring how much water's left in.
Yes, basically it's mitigation, I believe, for the Ocho well. But it's a well that they want to put in down south. And when Nelha went to see where we got approved and some of the mitigation, it's kind of mitigation. To see, the theory is that these monitoring wells would pick up saltwater intrusion and stuff like that was happening.
So it's like a testing.
Right. Another bill about looking at how much water resources the state has.
That seems pretty important.
I forgot, I'm botching the language, but, yeah. And, yeah, so there's that, and then,
If there's something that you could come up with that we should be talking about specifically on the next agenda. We could send it.
I was gonna reach out, it's not exactly on there, but it could be on there. There's the Water Resource Protection Plan a while back called for a pilot adaptive management plan for the KO around the park. So that it's kind of stalled. That could get incorporated into these things.
I remember that was being discussed at one of those hearings.
Exactly. So that would be. But these are kind of I'm not really prepared to speak about these things, these are kind of opinions, they're not.
You're following one.
I am, I just want, I don't want to be pursued representing national parks.
No, I live in general.
These are just things that are in my head, so. Yeah, I'll share them with you and then. So, yeah, I've had some problems.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about, water, announcements, yeah. So we can come back to that subject. Yeah, so you wanted to testify on this agenda item?
No, I don't know that the job is new business. So,
Well, let's finish this agenda item so I can close it. So I guess I wanted to add that clarity, I think, just for the community members that, if you have an interest in tracking other bills, or at the legislature, they come to your mind, you think they're have any, bearing on what we're doing, and what, so please.
if you read about a bill and you think it is somehow related to the CDP, not specifically naming it, but would affect our ability to implement goals within the plan.
Is there a link that we can know? There's nothing, we just have to
if you go onto Hawaii.gov and then you go to the state legislature,
Okay.
then you can get.
Yeah, capital.hawaii.gov,
Yeah.
will take you right
We're
there.
gonna make all the bills.
Then
Yeah.
all the bills, all 3,000 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can generate a report that'll show you every bill where it's at, and then.
Yeah.
I pick out the bills that I'm watching and I track those bills, and then,
But it's kind of hard, like, if you don't have any idea, you know, the bill number.
it's a lot at first, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And we're getting close to, I mean, next meeting will be important, I think, because it'll be, probably, is that after crossover? Will be at March for. Maybe it's
For
before.
our bill, Senator Greenhouse's office said that because we passed the first committee, that until the 21st of February for the next.
Yeah, but when is the crossover with the house? I can't remember, those deadlines online, but.
It's in March, but.
It's in March, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what date.
Yeah, so if there are bills that we are concerned with, I mean, that they'll be pretty far along at that
Right.
point, yeah.
Right.
They're still growing, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit of the legislature only meets for a few months, so it's a bit of a. It's really chaotic for those few months. I think April is when it stops, yeah, so.
I think May is. Yeah.
May.
And they were somebody that they killed the bill to go year round, I guess that already got killed. And I can see them going for like 6 months. Because they just have too much to cover with them in these 3 months.
Okay, if there's no other discussion on this item, then we'll just close it. And that concludes actually the business portion. Number 3. Next we have proposed new business, and you wanted to provide some input on that, on this item, so, did I read that right?
Well, I wanted to talk about Kona watersheds. In 15 minutes, I'm going to be meeting with Mayor Kushner. I've not talked to him before about the watersheds. I've been working on it for 25 years, along with California wastewater treatment plant. So I want to give you some updates on it. This morning at 9 o'clock, I got an email from the county saying that they put out an emergency proclamation for the Gila wastewater treatment plant. And I sent that to Ramsey Mansour, who's a previous environmental manager, and Stephen Holmes was a council member who 25 years ago got the city and county of Honolulu to reduce potable water usage by recycling wastewater. So I've been working with these guys for a long time, and Ramsey, 4 years since he came on the mayor's team, but it was Mayor Ross' position that they, wanted to fight with justice, and Steve Holmes worked with EPA to do the consent decree. So these are 2 knowledgeable people that are not being acknowledged by our new administration. So I created a task force with them to work with the county, and I'm just getting started on it. But the one thing about the water, with Jeff, and been following the Campbell Aquifer issue with seaworm for over 10 years, and I keep looking for the Campbell Aquifer update plan before we, change anything in the general plan. So I want to recommend that you folks, tell the planning department or the mayor that we demand a Campbell Aquifer update and whatever you
And that's off the Department of Water Supply.
Yes, Department of Water Supply, for sure. And look at the watershed issues. Right now, currently I'm working on 3 kill pools.
We're not on, we can't, it's not on the agenda to discuss the water issue, but I think if you're proposing something for us to get it onto the agenda, so that we can have that full throated discussion.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
new
wanna make it
business
up. That's
that
what I want.
I would like to put on
Right,
next
okay,
month's agenda.
okay,
Thank you.
yeah. We're gonna circle back to a water discussion in a few minutes, so anyway. So, under this, is there any new business to propose?
I think we should put the
And agenda?
park
Yeah.
back on there again, the regional
Okay.
park, hopefully we'll have some new information. I'll say I don't have any new information.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to put Senate Bill 869 and House Bill 686 back on the agenda for an update.
Can we leave that open enough, specific and open enough, I guess, so that we can, if there's another, something, an update on one of the bills I have mentioned, that we can have that discussion,
Yeah, and so
and just an update.
I think we'll separate it like Nancy asked, so we'll make hers or its own item, and then maybe we can keep this general state legislative.
Yeah.
One. Yeah,
Okay. And I would encourage anyone from the committee, if you have something that comes to your attention between now and whenever we set the next agenda, just let myself or planning know.
yeah, and then we'll,
With regards to bills.
since our next meeting is what, March 11? Right, so agenda has to be posted 6 days prior, we try to do it a week in advance, we're not rushing it that same day.
Yeah.
So that means beginning of March, and it would be nice if we're bringing in bills, if we're gonna do decision making on it. Like, it would be nice to have like some sort of drafted something, and so if you need help in planning in terms of putting that together, putting together some bullets, or doing, you know, searches within the CDP to see how we can connect the bill to the CDP to make sure we have proper standing, to provide that testimony, that would be, you know, we're available for that.
Maybe since you mentioned that, this goes back to the House and Senate bills. What do we do if between now and the next meeting we feel like the action committees should submit more testimony, but maybe reflecting a slightly different position? How do we deal with something like that?
And so I'm starting, because this is like all of our first time doing this through the action committee, like the changes that happen, you know, with the bill numbers and how it's going through the different committees, I think we're kind of, like, I was a little concerned initially, but I think the way, because we didn't even have bill numbers in the beginning when we did the initial vote, but like, we've been safe this whole time. But then if we're gonna change the content of the type of testimony, I'm feeling like we would have to do that in a meeting.
The only thing I felt like, I don't think there'll be need for major changes, but it seems like right now we're safe because we moved over to the house, we just put exactly the same testimony on.
Right.
I mean, there's no point in keep doing that, but I mean, it'd be nice just to rephrase it, just to look like fresh testimony without necessarily being substantially different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any way to do that.
And especially since we set it up that the other ACs are essentially mirroring your guys' testimony, also like, I was also thinking by then we had built them, but because the way we voted on it, the way the motions were, that we could do that, so. If we're just changing like technicalities, right, like titles of vote, the vote was still to, it was, I think, centered around the state legislature, and it was still centered around that outreach board bill, and so I think our connections are there. So if we're just changing details like that, I think that's okay. Like maybe an introduction, if you want to change the
Maybe just
introduction, or we
the
want,
phraseology, just to make it look like it's a new,
right,
instead
right,
of just literally sending the same text back.
right, so make it reflective of the new committee, the new body that will see it. As opposed to actually making content changes as to what the points of your testimony are, like, we're not gonna touch that, I think we're okay to make those changes, in my understanding.
We could also call attention to the fact that it's being supported by other AC members, other AC committees.
Yeah, I think that's okay. If you wanna do those kind of, so if you wanna,
Just a little more.
yeah, make those tweaks.
I mean, for this time, for what we're preparing for tomorrow, you know, they thought I was thinking it over the next.
Yeah.
Because then we'll get moved on to other committees.
Yeah, and so that's what, as we're doing, I think we'll get better at like making that
Yeah.
vague but nice, you know, concise also, right? I think Nancy also made some nice changes, and we normally have a cover letter and then, but that's, you know, it's easier, condensed version for this audience. You can say that, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other suggestions from community members? At this point, we still have time between now and next time, right? Because we're,
Another, a little unrelated, going back to the CIP conversation, that staff member let me know that it's expected to be at council by the beginning of March. So that would be before it's not gonna be done in one hearing. And they usually have the departments come in and explain.
Right.
So multiple sessions, but that should start by the beginning of March. So that would be before the March 11 meeting.
Yep.
But maybe also we just still have that locked in as a business item for March
yeah.
11.
let's
Yeah,
start
yeah.
At least see what that list is.
Yeah, see what that looks like. And then
Yeah,
discuss
that's
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys get that update? You're gonna give me that update? Or,
For the CIP.
well, between.
Yeah, once
Whatever the councils. right?
Once it's hit, once we have a public copy, then we'll send that out.
Okay.
And that way you guys can start looking and
Yeah, thank you.
scribbling, yeah, we'll share that.
Okay, I want to come back to Sue with us, so that we get it clear on the agenda, what we might be discussing.
So, I
Your
created,
concern is over the plan, over the,
so it's Kona Ridge to Reef Institute, so it's on the watersheds.
right,
And then the other one is the cabinet officer update. And then the
Water use development.
water use and development plan.
yeah, specific. Okay,
And then the third is Kelly English water treatment plant. Should we create an emergency proclamation of the different keynote? That's what's being recommended. And I'm sorry that I got.
Thank you.
well, good luck in your meeting.
Thanks.
So I think yeah, we should have that's gonna be required, keep someone from DWS to help us. Okay, how about, is it okay to send a letter? Did you,
Today.
no, we can't.
We can't vote on this.
Okay,
But knowing this, we can start to draft or write no decision making. So
It might want to go, better go to SeaWorld.
Commission on Water Resources, that's a big agency, they both kind of have authority over the water use development.
yeah, but the county's gotta come up with it.
Right, the county comes up with it and see where the.
Zero is approved, so,
Or kind of like,
and the county's not, that hasn't done it.
well, they have, it's in a draft.
Right.
And it got stuck in the county council, and then they voted to postpone it like in 2017.
Yeah.
And they've never come back
Yeah.
to
That's right.
they deferred it, and it's never come back.
SeaWorld we did.
No, county council deferred it.
So I actually have the bill number and everything.
I think so.
It must have been, had it on the agenda and referred to it.
True, yeah, true. I'll put that on my list of things to send you.
If you can find it,
I have
we can decide that specific thing might be good to have on the agenda.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll have that.
that's a good route for us to.
Because if the county is supposed to be approving a water plan, then they didn't, you know, for Kona specifically, that's what it was.
There's a water use development plan for Hawaii County, but this was an update just for Kealoha.
Oh,
They were,
and that's
There
certainly,
might be other updates too, but that's the one I'm most familiar with, is Kealoha.
that seems that it certainly applies to us.
Absolutely,
I wonder why they deferred it.
because there was a bunch of public testimony from people like in the food.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
that was the issue, whether to designate it as a special.
No, well, that's after.
After the 2017, or after the.
Yeah, the petition got denied. Part of the negotiations discussion, the petition was updating what was the development plan. They had an update, and then later on in the fall of that year, it was before the county council for approval. And there was a lot of public testimony opposing the update. And they council voted to defer. It's never been up again. But, but I think the Department of Water Supply is working on it, so they may have some details. Yeah.
Okay, well, nonetheless, we should have, maybe have that discussion because it's getting more timely.
Yes.
Okay, if there's nothing else on proposed new business, then we go to the announcements. So, on the environmental notice, I noticed on there was a issue about the DHH proposal. DHHL. EA. I don't know if anyone had a chance to go through the
No,
information I
I
sent.
I haven't yet, but I'm curious about this. Is this supposed to be Lot Yopua? In that area?
It's for water for Lot Yoku, but it's quite a ways south.
Okay,
We're somewhat south of town.
okay. Bo had mentioned this one to me a while ago, and that's why I was wondering if this is this one.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at it yet, but
So
While
the,
we're doing the scoping, or send us some scoping letter for it, we said we didn't have enough. So
I think the draft BIS is out.
the draft EIS is
and
out.
that's why this is in
Yeah,
here.
Right, and that's why it's there, so you can read through.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it's for Hawaiian homes.
So the,
Oh.
Camel Bay Resort hasn't come up on the environmental notice yet.
I haven't.
I looked for it, I couldn't find it, but that means that the county hasn't signed up on it yet, which is interesting.
So, just for you, as an FYI, I provided comment, on this well and a bunch of other wells, under my home we had. And, you know, my concern was always the same, I've always said it was here, you know, and we really need a better plan, and what is the priority, what are the concerns about, you know, lack of water going into the ocean, what about the resources, and it's, I know that's a complicated question to ask with a complicated answer. But nonetheless, the projects are moving forward, and they're, you know, applying for water permits, either to drill new wells. This one here is, I think they're working on an agreement with continuously.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so. I think that's.
right, yeah, so.
And we still have the pig farm.
They're gonna trade credits. So, yeah, that's why they
Trading credits, yeah,
trade,
our favorite thing.
right? So it's, it gets really kind of complex when you think about it, but in all my testimony, it was really about, my concern is just for the overall aquifer. Yeah, and we really need to look at prioritizing some of the demands for water.
Well, like, I keep saying, we don't know, you know, what the sustainable yield for taking water out of the aquifer is. And at the same time, if we're gonna allocate water, which then, you know, it's for smart development, so to speak, you know, and that's where the whole TOD thing is, you know, where, you know, you're doing good planning and then, you know, and not just be giving water out here, there and everywhere without any planning behind it.
Yeah,
It's
again, it's,
frustrating.
there's, more for the committee to grab hold of if you wish to. But
Well, I still am interested in doing the pig grow. We were talking about a public, you know, education forum of some sort. That was an issue that came up with our bill. They didn't like the word that the committee had the authority to organize. They didn't like that. So I said, we can, if you don't like that word, you can take it out. We don't need to say we're organizing it. And so, but anyway.
are there any other discussions on this particular well or any other water issues?
I think it'd be good to talk about next meeting.
Yeah.
Water issues.
I'm hoping we can get hold of that. Okay, so the next issue was the general plan. it's, you said earlier, it's still going through.
Still going through planning commission,
Yeah.
so. Yeah. But I think. Nearing towards the end, right, we got February for Leeward at the end of February 20. And then in Windward would be March 10, and I think those meetings are kind of last round.
Is that going to be give them a presentation in any capacity?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it's going, yeah. Yeah, so Bethany now is the,
Do you know April's gone?
April is gone.
Didn't know that.
April has left the
Oh.
county. She is going to go to a private firm, planning firm, and Bethany has come back from Oscar, and she will be the planning program manager for long range. For the time being, she's TAing to that position. for now.
She
Temporary
was,
assignment.
they had running the general plan project initially.
And general plan has been in her duties for a while, so this is. right back.
Perfect fit.
Yes.
What's going on with Oscar? Someone else running that
I
or?
believe, and so Bethany, I think at the moment is actually doing a little bit of both. Because Laura Ocasio, I believe, who was,
Thank you.
appointed by the new mayor, but I don't believe Laura has finished going through council yet. My understanding. But I think he's going through that soon, and I don't know when her hearing is, but yeah, so they're doing. Transitional month for planning, yeah, for all of us.
It's been a lot of changes
Yeah.
since November.
Multiple lemons, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion on the announcements? No, if not, we can go to the last one. This is where I had some comments here. On the seeking applicants for the Kona CDP. This is not about the Kona CDP, but it is specifically about Kona, but it is about the CDP. It's I ran into a friend of mine who I've known for 40 years or so, and he said, "Hey, I saw your two people from the action committee on our action committee meeting." He's in Kona, he lives in Kona. And so he asked me a few questions. He said the presentation was really good. It opened up his eyes. He really liked it, to the point where he says he's gonna apply for the Kona, for the Kau action committee. So
That's awesome.
I thought, hooray, outreach, wrong district. But wrong
Way
district.
to go.
Yeah.
Well, I got 2 thank you emails from people and colleagues.
Oh, there you go.
That's great.
Yeah. And so he was quite pleased, about the fact that I was on it because then he had a face he couldn't associate with it. But he said you guys did a good job.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's hard to know whether you're saying enough or not too much or,
Yeah, he's I've known him for a long.
Well, that's good. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, yeah, that was in between the carrots and the celery, I think, in the supermarket. Yeah. Okay, are they, do we have more? I think that's it. There are no other comments? Questions? If not, go.
Talking about the general plan, again. The thing that is, as I've been reading it, I get the impression that the people that are drafting this are not really seeing through a lens of increasing or keeping the quality of life for the residents. And I think that really should be the first and foremost thing that they consider in all of their plans. Because we're kind of the nuts and bolts that make everything work. And if we're having city traffic, and if we're having rational water, and if we're having all of these different issues.
we're not really serving the people that live there. And I think that their general plan is supposed to be doing that. But I think that the language in it makes me feel as though we're not the most important thing and they're not doing things to increase the quality of life.
Well, I think that's what I think everything in there is for.
I know that. I know that, but I guess that I'm concerned about it because there again is the infrastructure issue. There's really a very great point of that. And like you said, it doesn't say shall, it says should. And we've got a lot of things that take a lot of time. And they're okay for a development way back when that looked a certain way, and now the people that have sold it, now it looks completely different. And there haven't been there's nothing that says, I think there's just too much leeway. It's like you were saying, you know, it's the land use commission, there's nobody that really has the oversight. And is guaranteed for us to make sure that we're not on a runaway horse.
Well, I think that's what they do plans because they don't have enough positive, you know.
Well,
And I think in some cases, like with specific infrastructure, you have to go to the council and you have to get a bill and.
Right.
And get funding, like for example, poor community needs to be wired, you know, that isn't gonna be addressed in the general plan. I mean, they can recommend it and it's recommended in the Kona CDP, but unless it comes up to the budget, then the budget's amended to include the funding to do the project.
Right.
It's not gonna happen.
That is-
So I mean, it has to be a really specific trigger to make specific.
Well, exactly, and I
positive
think that is what I have in mind. To be able to say, if you've only got this kind of infrastructure, then you can't put that there.
And that's what the concurrency part of the code was when we testified regarding.
Right.
Kona 3 LLC, my position was violation of concurrency. So you have to, I mean, generally speaking, I agree with everything you're saying, but in order to do anything about it, you have to use the mechanisms that exist.
Right, so that's my question, what kind of mechanisms do?
Well, you're just talking very widely, you have to narrow it down.
Right,
I think the election in November was an indication, the county election was an indication of some people's maybe perhaps dissatisfaction with perhaps the way things are being administered through in government. So, the election has consequences. Unfortunately, it went the other way, it seems like on the continent, but I think, you know, our first order of business is really the vote. I think it's just saying it's really not, we have the, Hawaii used to be like, what I can remember 80% would vote when I first started voting at 18 years old. We were high. Now I think we're in the 40s.
Really bad.
We're one of
worse than history.
you know, and it's, what do they say, you deserve the people you vote in the office,
right,
you elect. And it's not necessarily the individuals, some of the processes that are set up, and the general plan is an important part of the process, but
it's pretty general.
if it is,
Well, it's supposed
It
to,
could-
Yeah, it's supposed to
it can
be.
interpreted a million
Right.
ways. There's so much
Right.
latitude.
and the CDPs came about because of the aspirational goals, I think, that the community had for where this was, you know, where we were supposed to be going at the time. Those were really tumultuous times back in the 2000s, late 1990s. So I guess what we can do with the action committee is usually as a tool, you know, use it for what it was meant to do. We just gotta get better at it. I think, and the frustrations will always be there.
And does-
I don't think we're alone in our frustration.
No, but does the CDP supersede?
the general plan has. If the two are in contradiction, the general plan has the ultimate power. I think it's more learnings very specifically, if there's something really specific, like a particular infrastructure that you think, you know, that there's some support in general for the CDP that has been neglected. I need to try to drill down to something really specific that maybe these guys could agendize and they could say, well, we think maybe there needs to be testimony or money allocated for this particular project, because it's too, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of things that I can address.
Right.
And nobody would deny that.
Well, the CDP is, it seems to be pretty specific about having police and fire and, you know, all of these things in place in your infrastructure. Before other things are built. But it's not the same.
Well, it's not supposed to be that specific. The general plan is supposed to be almost more of a philosophical document. It doesn't have legal authority except for that. That's why I was so upset with the whole Korean map thing. Because it didn't have legal authority. The rest of it doesn't really have legal authority. It's a guideline. There's lots of one fuzzy language.
Well, yeah, it concerns me that there is no authority. You know, be a safeguard.
That's what the council was for, to come up with specific projects and get them passed and funded.
Thank you for the education, but we need.
That's why we used, you know, when we voted for, to testify kind of against the Kona 3 LLC, we didn't quote something in the general plan, we quoted the county code that hurts thing, and that's what was important, because this is the law. Like, you know, they try to follow the plan to create these laws, but really it's the laws that have.
And I think there are some things that the plan calls for that there probably haven't been was created to reflect yet. Okay. I mean, it's constantly frustrating.
Constantly frustrating.
But it keeps us life. I mean,
It gives us things to do.
well, it allows us to meet once. a month. But really, I honestly, I think we are moving in the right direction, just with a slow. Just be patient.
Well, there's a lot better like
That would be sweet.
than the general plan compared to years ago in terms of the sort of setting a framework for better thinking about things, you know, but in order to implement them, a lot more work is gonna have to be done, you know, in terms of actually doing the research of what the mechanism, well, even this tree thing that you were gonna be working on, I mean, that's not gonna happen unless it does.
Yeah.
That's a one specific example. We have no tree ordinance. It's not gonna happen unless somebody does it. Yes, it should be done, but who's gonna do it?
We're gonna figure it out. We're figuring it out.
But that's just one.
It's one little thing, I know, but it's a really, really, really.
It is, but that's just that one thing takes somebody to do a lot of work and dedicate themselves to it.
Point me in the right direction.
Okay, folks, you ready to adjourn?
All motions to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much
Thanks, David.
for everyone's
Thanks,
time.
Dave, for
Thanks.
here. Maybe we'll see you in the flesh sometime.
Yeah.
Well, he used to bring his warm bud to the meeting.
She brought up. Had a question.